In 221 BCE, a 38-year-old king sat in the newly conquered capital of his last remaining rival and faced a problem. He had just done something no one in Chinese history had ever done. He had conquered all 6 of the other major warring states, Shi, Chu, Yan, Wei, Han, Zhao, and unified them under a single authority. The wars had taken nearly a decade. The territory now under his control stretched from the Yellow River to the Yangtze, from the coast to the western mountains. He needed a title. King was insufficient. Each of the states he had conquered had been ruled by a king. He needed something that communicated the unprecedented scale of what he had accomplished. He invented one. He combined the ancient Chinese terms for supreme sovereign, Huang, and emperor, Di, and called himself Qin Shi Huang Di, first emperor of Qin, or, in the form that became standard, first emperor. He declared that his dynasty would last 10,000 generations. It lasted 15 years. Yingzheng, the man who became Qin Shi Huang, became king of Qin at age 13. He did not begin ruling immediately. His early years as king were managed by a regent named Lu Buwei, a merchant who had positioned himself as the boy's political guardian. When Qin Shi Huang reached adulthood, he removed Lu Buwei from power and began governing himself. What followed was a systematic campaign of conquest. Qin had advantages. It had been strengthening its military and administrative systems for over a century, using a philosophy called legalism, a school of thought that emphasized strict law, centralized control, and state power over individual or aristocratic privilege. It had iron weapons and large cavalry forces. It had a bureaucratic system that allowed it to absorb and administer conquered territory efficiently. The other 6 states were powerful, but divided and often in conflict with each other. Qin Shi Huang used a combination of military force, bribery, and assassination. His agents reportedly paid to assassinate or corrupt key enemy officials before campaigns, to weaken each target before attacking. One by one, the states fell. By 221 BCE, he was the only king left. And then, he was the first emperor. What Qin Shi Huang did with his unified empire was extraordinary in scale. He standardized the written Chinese script. Before unification, different states had used different writing systems. He standardized weights and measures and axle widths for carts so that roads built in one part of the empire could be used by vehicles from another. He built a network of roads stretching across the empire, radiating from the capital. He constructed a canal system in the south to supply military campaigns. He began the northern defensive walls that would eventually, under later dynasties, become what we know as the Great Wall. In his era, it was a series of connected fortifications along the northern border, built using conscripted labor under brutal conditions. Hundreds of thousands of workers died. The walls were functional. They were also a demonstration of what a unified state could demand from its subjects. He built a palace for himself, the Epang Palace, that, according to ancient sources, covered an area large enough to seat 10,000 people. It was never finished. He built his tomb while he was still alive. It took 700,000 workers nearly 4 decades to construct. Inside, according to ancient accounts, there were rivers of mercury flowing through a model of China, automatic crossbows set to fire at intruders, and astronomical maps on the ceiling. The 8,000 terracotta soldiers discovered in 1974 are the outer guard. The actual burial chamber has never been fully excavated. Qin Shi Huang was afraid of death, not in the way most people are afraid of death. As a background fact of existence, he was afraid of it the way someone is afraid who has decided it is a problem to be solved. He sent expeditions to the mythical Eastern Islands, where immortals were said to live. He consulted alchemists and Taoist practitioners who claimed to know the formulas for eternal life. He commissioned the preparation of elixirs. He became increasingly unwilling to discuss death openly. Court officials who mentioned the word in his presence were reportedly punished. He traveled constantly, making inspection tours of his empire rather than staying in any single location, in part because he believed movement would confuse potential assassins. He slept in different rooms of his palace. He kept his location secret from his own court. 3 assassination attempts had been made on his life before he became emperor. He survived all 3. The fear they generated never left. In 213 BCE, Qin Shi Huang's chief minister, Li Si, proposed a solution to what he saw as a political problem. Scholars and intellectuals, particularly those trained in the older Confucian and other philosophical traditions, kept comparing the Qin dynasty's methods unfavorably to the historical precedents they had memorized. They quoted old texts to argue that the emperor's policies were wrong. They used the past as a tool of criticism. Li Si recommended burning the books. Not all books, medical, agricultural, and legalist texts were exempted, but the philosophical and historical texts from before Qin unification were to be burned. Private ownership of these books was made a crime. Over the following year, significant numbers of classical texts were destroyed. The following year, when scholars continued to circulate contraband texts and criticize the regime, Qin Shi Huang responded more directly. By most accounts, approximately 460 scholars were buried alive, executed by being interred in pits. The exact number and method are contested. The event is not. He had unified China and standardized its writing. He then burned many of the texts that writing had preserved. In 210 BCE, Qin Shi Huang died during an inspection tour of his Eastern Empire. He was 49 years old. His court physician had been providing him with pills containing mercury, a practice that was not unusual in this era. Taoist alchemists believed mercury could purify the body and extend life when consumed in carefully managed amounts. Qin Shi Huang had been taking these pills for years, believing they were lengthening his life. Mercury is a neurotoxin. Chronic exposure causes progressive damage to the kidneys, brain, and nervous system. The symptoms include mood instability, which the historical record in later years shows, and eventual organ failure. His death was sudden enough that the officials traveling with him were able to conceal it for weeks. The body was kept in a sealed cart. Fish were placed near the cart to explain the smell. His chief ministers decided, while traveling, who the next emperor would be, passing over the designated heir and selecting a more controllable younger son. The succession crisis that followed destroyed the dynasty within 3 years. The Qin dynasty, which was supposed to last 10,000 generations, ended 15 years after it began. The tomb, with its mercury rivers, has never been fully opened. Modern testing has confirmed the ground above the central burial chamber contains mercury at levels far above normal. The first emperor built himself a tomb containing mercury to represent immortality. He may have died from it. The Qin Shi Huang legacy is one of the most genuinely contested in Chinese history. The case for him is serious. He unified a territory that had been at war for over 2 centuries. The standardizations he imposed, writing, weights, measures, roads, created a foundation that persisted through every subsequent dynasty. China, as a geographic and cultural concept, owes something fundamental to what he forced into being. The case against him is also serious. The human cost of his projects was enormous, documented, and in many cases unnecessary. The book burning destroyed irreplaceable texts. The scholar executions were political violence against intellectual dissent. The invasions and conquests killed hundreds of thousands. He is not a figure who allows comfortable conclusions. He built too much and destroyed too much for either pure condemnation or pure celebration. What is unambiguous is the irony at the center of his story. He was terrified of death. He built his tomb while he was alive. He drank mercury to live forever. He died at 49. The dynasty he said would last 10,000 generations lasted 15 years. This is the Dragon Throne. We cover the rulers of Asia, the ones who tried to make themselves eternal, and the ones who couldn't. Subscribe if you want more. New episodes every week.